Whoa! Hey! Wait! Just when you thought it was safe to get back into the swimming pool, it's the Talking Pools podcast starring Rudy Stankiewicz and Andrea Nannini. Welcome to the show!
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to the Talking Pools podcast. I am Andrea Nannini and my co-host.
I'm Rudy Stankiewicz.
And we're going to be talking about pools.
We are going to be talking about pools. How cool is that? That's why we call it the Talking Pools podcast.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know how to follow us or where to find us, you can find us at Talking Pools on all of the social media sites. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'll be working on a TikTok soon.
Of course you will.
Yeah. See, I bought my little microphone for it. We have our podcast is on Buzzsprout, which is actually also on Spotify. I don't know if you knew that. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else you get podcasts, I would imagine.
We're actually we're everywhere where great podcasts can be found. How does that sound? Very official. So
yep.
while you're talking about ways to contact us, we are on Instagram, like you said, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. But I saw, because I don't really get to see much. It doesn't really tell me who the followers are exactly on the other pages, right? But on Instagram, it does, at least until we get tons and tons and tons. But right now, I just wanted to do a shout out. There are a couple of manufacturers who did decide to follow us on Instagram. So for doing that, you get the free shout out. And I just wanted to say thank you. And we appreciate you listening to us, as well as everybody else who's listening, which I wish I could list everybody by name. But the manufacturers that list us, we have Aquastar products, Aquastar pool products. You know who they are, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
Okay, so she does, which is cool. See, and here's the thing. If I say Aquastar pool products, a lot of folks might not always grab that right off the bat. But as soon as I say it's the main drain with the colored dot, now everybody recognizes that because it's widely used. This company went into business 2003. They manufacture VGB compliant main drain grates. And they have a colored circle in the middle of each one of them. But yeah, they came in and with a goal of just specifically making swimming pools safer. And this is a free ad you get for following us or being one of our first manufacturer followers. The other one I saw pop up there, Andrea, was Blu-ray XL. Do you know who they are?
I do. I've used their products before. I love Blu-ray XL.
It's one of the minerals that you add that can help you use lower levels of chlorine. And the reason you can use lower levels of chlorine with these types of minerals is because it kills and prevents algae and bacteria. So it does a lot of the sanitizing for you. So we talk about a lot of times, I know, I have a book on how to get rid of swimming pool algae, right?
Yes, I have it.
That's available on Amazon. So there's my shameless plug. But the way in that book, we talk about things with a 1-2 punch as far as copper and silver goes. So this Blu-ray XL actually has a 1-2-3 punch because not only do they use copper and silver, copper, of course, is great at lysing bacteria and algae. It also aids in inhibiting photosynthesis because when algae takes in too much copper, it really just can't make food anymore. Silver also good at lysis, but when silver gets inside, it breaks through the cell wall. When algae or bacteria take in silver, what happens is this thing, and I'm going to say the name of it wrong, but they call it the oligodynamic effect. I think I got it somewhat close. And
perfect, nailed it.
That's where silver actually starts to mess with the DNA inside of the cells, the bacteria, the algae. Now, on top of that, Blu-ray XL has some zinc in there. And what zinc does is it actually creates different oxygenated radicals inside the cells, which also then destroys DNA. So 1-2-3 punch for preventing algae and for preventing bacteria. So again, that's Aquastar. White goods is what they do. Aquastar products, they manufacture white goods, VGB be compliant main drains. And then we have Blu-ray XL, enables you to use a much, much lower chlorine level when you have one
I've
of
used
these
it
products.
before. I love the Blu-ray XL. It's taken away a lot of black algae problems for me in certain pools. You just pop one of them in the pump basket, and it helps keep the black algae away. You know, once you get rid of it all, I hadn't seen it come back once I had those in there. So
Copper's a fantastic product for keeping all types of algae away, actually. So that's one of the main reasons to look at. So for both of you folks for following me, you get the free shout out, a little bit of advertising. Hopefully I said everything correctly. And let's lead with that into our conversation. So Andrea, last week we spoke about that chlorine shortage. And we talked about some of the different things that were going on, but I wanted to this week talk a little bit about some solutions. So what would you recommend? What give me something that somebody can do, whether it's a pool service person on their route or a homeowner at their own pool. What would you recommend the first thing to try if they can't find the tablets they normally use? And what would our process be here?
Well, I would say, go to the next thing that you can find. If you can't find the trichlor tabs, but you can find the cal hypo tabs, the non-stabilized tabs, go ahead and switch it up. Just obviously make sure that you don't mix the trichlor and the cal hypo tabs, because you will have an explosion. You could end up with, something popping.
Big boom, actually. You get a big, you end up with an explosion. I've actually seen the lid come off of a chlorinator and take out a chunk of the awning of somebody's home where they had actually added cal hypo when there was a trichlor feeder in place. And the trichlor, that's the tabs that we're short on. Cal hypo tabs are available, I believe. And like Andrea said, you can't go putting different chemicals in a feeder that had held another chemical. You need to swap it out. If you go to a different chemical, you need to replace the feeder. What you actually
even the floaters.
Yeah, say again.
I said even with the floaters, even those blue floaters, I saw a picture of one that had completely exploded because somebody put a cal hypo tab in it.
Well, let's not do that. No booms inside the pool, no booms alongside the equipment. So if you're going to switch to some different method of chlorination, you need to make sure that you shift to a different type of feeder. So one should come with the other. Just have it installed always by your local pool professional. That's going to be the best person to do that for you. So, all right. So we go with these cal hypo tabs. So then basically, if you go from trichlor to these cal hypo tabs that you can safely put in the skimmer, you don't need to install a different feeder because you're just putting them right in the skimmer basket, correct?
Correct.
So that saves the cost of installing a feeder. So that's probably a very economical way to go. All right, so
the cal hypo tabs tend to cost a little bit more, I believe, than the trichlor tabs.
Even now?
But I think so.
I've seen trichlor tabs around $600-700. Right.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
There are price gougers out there, which are just really crooks and ripping off people who need the product. But it is what it is. That's just the nature of the beast. All right. So cal hypo tabs, that's an option if we can't get the trichlor. What about liquid? Do you use liquid bleach? Chlorine bleach?
I am 100%, yes, 100% liquid. I don't even use tabs,
Okay.
First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a stabilizer level that is within the ideal range. So if you have, say, 100 ppm, parts per million of cyanuric acid, it's been my experience that you're going to have a little bit harder of a time, or you're going to need to keep the chlorine at a much higher level.
Can we talk about
that? Yes.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because, cyanuric acid in certain circles, we'll say, cyanuric acid in certain circles has become a bad word. And in other circles, we love it. So tell me the bad, right? What's the good, the bad, and the fugly of cyanuric acid? Why is it evil? why do people talk about it so much? If you didn't know that they talk about it, just take my word for it. They talk about it. But what's the problem? What's
Well, they have, there's actually a whole thing that surrounds it. Some people will say it, you've heard of chlorine lock.
It's a
Some
myth.
people say it's a myth.
I'm one of those people.
I tend to agree with you. But like I was saying a second ago, so if you have a higher stabilizer, cyanuric acid level, you're going to need a higher chlorine level in order to, keep the pool sanitized, keep a free chlorine level.
So it slows down the way chlorine works.
Yes, basically it binds with the chlorine and they become, floating around together, I guess. And so the chlorine becomes less available because it's busy with the cyanuric acid.
So it's getting busy with the cyanuric acid. That's cool. All right. So
the more chlorine you're going to need.
Okay. So cyanuric acid is okay and actually beneficial up to a certain level, correct?
Yes.
Because that prevents the UV rays from burning off the chlorine in the water. It kind of works like a sunblock and enables it to stay in the water a little bit longer. So the only thing it has to worry about is sanitizing stuff.
Right, yes.
But if the level gets, well, and I'm going to give that number. Everybody goes with an ideal range of 30 to 50 parts per million. So I'm going to give it the same thing. We're going to call it 50 parts per million. So as we get higher than 50 parts per million, we need more and more chlorine as we go in order to maintain that same level of disinfectant sanitizer effectiveness. Now, well, if I do see that mine's too high, how do we fix that?
Well, the only way you can do that is through draining, diluting the pool. You'd have to do a partial drain, or you could vacuum to waste and then refill a bunch of times. But typically, where I am anyway in South Florida, we don't really worry about the cyanuric acid getting too high, especially during the rainy season.
This is the other side of the story, right?
Yes, so,
yeah.
Right, exactly. So a lot of people do worry about it getting too high, and then because then it requires draining and just this whole process. Or I hear there's a new chemical that, well, not a new chemical, but a new.
Well, that's not proven yet, so let's not go there.
Okay.
We're working on it, but
okay.
In the normal circumstances, so to lower the cyanuric acid level in the pool if it gets too high, and again, this depends on which side of the fence you're on, right?
Yes.
Once it gets too high, we're going to go with the regular numbers and say, okay, so we get about 50, we're approaching 100. We want to lower it because we want to keep it at a minimum below 100 parts per million, right? That's what the recommendation typically is. So to do that, I need to drain water from my pool. And to do that, you should have a licensed professional who's familiar with the groundwater tables and also with installing health points, right? Because what can happen if you take the water out of the pool and the groundwater level's high?
And you get a boat.
Yeah, a boat. It floats. It pops right out of the ground. And that's expensive to fix. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure if we're going to take the water out that we have somebody licensed and insured, right? You need a special kind of insurance for that. We want to make sure that, we at least have that backup in case something does go wrong.
Correct.
No matter what type of property you are, residential or commercial, somebody comes out and they want to take the water out of the pool, or you want to do it yourself, I would lean more toward getting a professional just simply for the reasons that I spoke about. But do make sure that then they have that extra special insurance that covers that, because not all general liability policies do.
No, they don't. They don't cover the pop-up insurance. You have to get that special. And there actually was just a huge news story recently, within the last couple of years, where there was a pool contractor who actually in Tampa was an unlicensed, not insured, and he drained the pool, and the whole pool popped up out of the ground. And then they had to, it was a whole legal process and all of this stuff. So, and with the equipment shortages and all of this stuff going on now with all current issues, I just heard again where they're having problems with people unlicensed and with no insurance trying to do work and scamming lots and lots of people. So definitely make sure that you are hiring someone reputable before you attempt something.
Anytime anybody,
like that.
anytime any company leaves someone with a mess like that, either it's the pool popped up out of the ground or an unfinished job, that is just totally not cool. Not cool at all.
You're going to have to find somewhere to a nice way to transport the bleach if you're not hiring somebody who's doing it for you. If you're going to the stores and picking it up yourself, you don't want the liquid chlorine spilling all over the place. It's not fun to drive in a car with too many jugs of chlorine.
They sell those, like those canisters, right? They can set in so in case they spill, it doesn't bleach out the whole car. If you've seen those, you know what I'm talking. This looks like a big tote, specially made just for chlorine.
Yeah, and they fit 2 jugs. I don't know if they're available, like to homeowners and stuff like that.
I think I've seen them in retail. I think I've seen them in retail stores. Yeah.
So they hold the 2.5 gallon jugs that we use to put the liquid bleach in. They hold 2 of those. So that would definitely be a good investment. And then you're going to need to make sure you have a good place to store it, because the sunlight, as we know, affects the strength of the chlorine. So you don't want to leave that sitting out in the open and getting hot and beat down by the sun. And as far as adding it to the pool goes, you just put the chlorine, just dump the jug right into the deep end, preferably with the pump running.
Now, liquid chlorine is known to have the shortest shelf life out of all the different chlorination methods. So you really shouldn't be picking up a month's supply at a time. So in switching the liquid, at a minimum, I will be going back and forth to the pool store on a regular basis.
Yes.
How long? I mean, you're down in South Florida, so that's a good place to gauge it. And not in Miami, a little bit north of that, but you're using liquid all the time, the bleach. 2.5 gallons, let's say a 15,000 gallon pool, right, which is an average backyard size pool for Florida, if we were going to go with an average. How long does those 2.5 gallon jugs, that 5 gallons of bleach, how long does that last me?
Well, it all depends on what's in the pool and what the chemistry is already. So if you want to talk about averages, on a good day, I can put 2.5 gallons or about 2 gallons. Usually I just do the full jug into an average size pool. And as long as I have my cyanuric acid levels, within range, I have a good pH level. I'll have a 3.0 when I come back next week.
A week now.
Yeah.
And that's with your crazy high cyanuric acid levels you maintain?
No, I keep mine at around 40 to 50.
40 to 50. Okay.
Let's say 50, 60. 40 is a little low.
So if I dump 2.5 gallons into a 15,000 gallon pool, and again, liquid chlorine is one of the only things where you can do this. But if you want to find out what you're getting out of it, if you pick up a gallon jug, we'll say just 1 gallon of 12% sodium hypochlorite. If I add that 1 jug of 12% sodium hypochlorite to a 10,000 gallon pool, it will give me 12 parts per million. If it was 10% sodium hypochlorite, or available chlorine rather, excuse me, and I put that into the pool, the 10,000 gallon pool, I would end up with 10 parts per million. So the math is super easy peasy, right? When we're dealing with liquid chlorine, as far as determining how much to add. Now, as far as determining how long it should last, that's going to be very different between somebody who's servicing pools and only there once a week versus somebody who either works at a facility and is on site, or a residential pool, the homeowner, they're there all the time. You're not allowed to choke to death and die in the middle of this. Right? So you can go about it one of 2 ways. You're either going to be sitting there or not sitting there, but you'll be, every time you need to add chlorine, you'll be dumping a jug in, which can be messy.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you've damaged clothing before using liquid chlorine.
I was just going to say, I forgot I was not wearing this shirt. I worked earlier today, but yes, I was wearing a shirt that had holes and bleach stains all over it. Oh, and pants. Yeah, forget about it.
So it's messy, right? So we have that. We're pouring it in. It splashes. You got to be really careful. We talked about the container for the back of the car. That doesn't mean you should veer away from the product. It means you should just be super careful. So
Yes.
automation, though, if I only had to fill this one jug that holds, what do they hold? Like up to 20, 15, 8 gallons, whatever. It's going to last me.
Commercial.
It's going to last me a good while, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do commercial pools, and that's how those pools are run. They're run on automation. So you have the big, depending on the size of the pool, sometimes they're, 10-gallon drums, 20, 50-gallon drums. And the tubes, you fill the you fill the big buckets with the chlorine and you mix that with water, and then the chemicals are fed into the pool that way.
So
And
you decided to use technical terms here, like the big buckets, right? So we're going to go with those. That's
I
fine.
use the word crock and nobody knows what I'm talking about. So
So, all right. So I'm not saying that you have to go with automation, right? You could easily just add it by hand on a regular basis. Again, another inexpensive solution to a lack of trichlor tablets. You buy it, you pour it in the pool, you test your water on a regular basis, you add more when you need it, and you can expect 2.5 gallon jugs to last you a decent amount of time, a couple of
I
weeks.
mean, if you, like I said, if you're just typically using the one jug and that gets you by with what you need, then 2 jugs will last you 2 weeks. I wouldn't buy any more than that. Then you just are gonna shorten the life of it and it's going to be useless. So I would say no more than 2 jugs at a time, unless that's what your pool needs. I have pools that need 2 jugs.
So, all right. So, one of the other things people are talking about a lot, and you hear this everywhere, and I know I've been involved in quite a few interviews since this chlorine shortage has started. And one of the big things everybody wants to talk about is just switch over to salt. That's what you hear a lot.
Yeah.
Are saltwater pools chlorine free?
If I answer the question wrong, are you going to kick me off the podcast?
Probably. So it's kind of recyclable, right? You don't add tons and tons of salt unless the pool has a leak. Once these systems are installed, you add a large amount of salt to establish a salt, we'll call it a bank.
It's supposed to be around 3,000.
So 3,000 to 4,000 is the norm, right? 3,000 to 4,000 parts per million of salt. I add it to the water. The salt dissociates into sodium and chloride. Now, in our system somewhere, there's a cell. And in that cell, there's electrified plates. There's actually an anode and a cathode inside of there. And as the saline solution, but at this point, water with chloride and sodium, the saline solution passes through, the chlorides from the NaCl, right, our sodium chloride, actually becomes chlorine gas. It becomes Cl2. And then that in the salt water is very, very similar to the liquid chlorine that we were just talking about.
Yes, it is.
Now, the cool thing about this is that chlorine in water becomes hypochlorous acid. That's the killing form of chlorine. And as it degrades, it returns to being chloride, which then passes through the cell, becomes chlorine gas. And what you end up with is pretty much a recyclable system, right? We're using it, that salt, that sodium chloride over and over again. We'll really the chloride from it. But you're not having to add a lot unless your pool has a leak.
Or unless it's super rainy season. But yeah, typically you don't add salt as often as you.
Right? You're talking hurricane force rains. I don't even like using rainy season as an example. Unless, of course, you're draining your water out on a regular basis because of the rain, which a lot of people like to do. A lot of people like to do that, right? That'll lower the level over time.
So you're going to have to actually clean the cell every once in a while. You have to take that apart. It should not be difficult unless you have.
It shouldn't be or it won't be, because this sounds a little tricky to me, right? So what am I looking at here? Fess up, tell the truth. What am I looking at?
So it's a matter of unscrewing 2 unions for most salt systems, for the ones that I see the most anyway.
So when you say it can be challenging, it depends on how tight that union is. That's all you're talking about, right? Those should only be tightened to snug.
They should be hand tightened only, yes. So you should not Hulk smash your salt cell union.
If I'm out there with a big monkey wrench and this thing's got all teeth marks in it and it's all chewed up because I've had a huge pair of channel locks, I'm doing it wrong. Put the tools away. Step away from the tools. Step away from the pool equipment. I should
They
not
call
be.
it the so once you get the cell apart, and most systems will have a programmed time interval. Usually it's around 3 months, and then you'll see some of them beep, some of them will flash a light at you, and it will say check cell. And then
It
that's
sounds like when I used to walk down the street as a kid, beeping and flashing lights at me. So
that happens to me when I drive still, so whatever. And then so you're going to want to get muriatic acid to clean the cell, and I use a bucket, but they actually make caps that you can put on the ends.
okay.
Yes, it's a threaded cap that you screw into the ends, depending on the type of cell, the manufacturer of the system that you have.
Okay.
You can usually get those directly from the manufacturers, I believe.
They just give them out.
I believe you have to buy them.
Son of a fish. There
Yes.
goes some. And are they expensive though?
They're real handy to have. I actually don't know. I've never bought one. I've just only used the ones that were given to me by my
Okay.
bosses.
So yours are free, but nobody else's are.
That's correct. Yes.
So we'll have to look into that.
Maybe we'll get.
They shouldn't be expensive, right? I've seen them.
I don't believe so. Yeah.
If you're spending, I wouldn't expect that you spend $20-$30 on these things.
I was gonna say
Maybe
$20 around that. Yeah.
It's not going to be. It's not going to be astronomical, but beneficial. Yes.
Makes it so much easier for sure.
So
Yes, because then you're not dumping acid.
It's worth the investment, right?
Yes, for sure. So, so you're gonna want to dilute the acid. Some people do straight acid. Some people dilute it. It's usually better to dilute the acid with water, and then you pour that into the cell.
1 part acid, 4 parts water. So basically, a quart of acid into a gallon of water, and you're covered.
Pretty much, but you're not going to need all that. And then that's when you're going to put your cell cap on, or you get your bucket, you put the cell in the bucket, and then you pour your acid mixture into the cell. And then the goal is to remove any calcium or any scale like that has formed on the blades inside the cell.
Of course, if we're working with acid, we want to make sure that we're wearing chemical splash goggles, right? And liquid impervious gloves. Those are take a look at the PPE for the acid or the instructions on the label. They'll tell you what protective equipment that manufacturer recommends that I think the correct word is don. What protective gear you don, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to say put on. You just put the crap on, right? And don't be stupid. Don't be stupid, right? You want to clean the salt cell, so now you're blind for the rest of your life because you decided you were going to play with acid. Don't do anything stupid like that. Your eyesight is super valuable. Put the chemical splash goggles on your face. We've just all come off wearing masks. We've worn masks for an entire year now, and we're not going to get into whether you're happy about it or not. But if you can wear a mask for an entire year every time you go somewhere, you can put a pair of chemical splash goggles on your face for the 15 minutes it takes to do this.
Yeah, not that. No, I agree. It's you really need to be safe when handling the chemicals for sure. And people like me that handle it every day, you tend to get comfy with it. You get a little familiar with the chemicals.
Oh, so you're one of those people I just yelled about. You're a slack ass. That's what you're saying. You're a slack ass when it comes to putting the goggles on. So I'm going to tell you the same thing as everybody else. Put the fucking goggles on your face, Andrea.
Okay, I will. So you're pouring the acid into the cell so you can remove any scale that has built up on the inside. Give it a good rinse. Screw it all back in. No Hulk smash on the unions. And then you should just be able to turn everything on, bleed out the air, and you should be good to go. And then if your system has an indicator light, there's usually a button that you press that you hold down for 3 seconds to clear the light, and then you are good to go after that.
All right, but what about chemical maintenance in the pool? All right, I know the salt generator is producing chlorine. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to buy tablets anymore, which is fine because apparently there isn't any anyway. So, but I do the salt, everything you said. What's the difference in chemistry in the water?
Why does it feel better on skin and hair? my
I didn't
answer
ask you
to
why it
people.
felt better on skin and
Yes,
hair. I don't
you
really
did.
care. I don't give a damn why it feels better on skin and
You
hair.
know that, okay?
I asked you what the difference chemically was, chemistry, maintaining the pool, not why it made my hair look shiny. Are you looking at me? Do I look like I give a rat's ass
It looks
about
like
how it's going to affect my hair? Seriously.
it looks like you
Have you
looks
ever
like it's
even
done
known me
nicer
with
with
hair?
beard.
Have you known me with hair ever?
Oh my goodness. No, I haven't actually.
No, see? And we've known each other for a long time now.
Yeah.
So I don't care how the water affects my hair. Let's go back to what we're doing different chemically in the pool. Go ahead. Why does it make your hair and skin feel better? Why not? You want to tell us, so let's hear about it.
I was gonna tell you I don't really know why.
All right, so we have no idea why. See, that's not true, actually, because it's like taking a mineral bath, right? So you get out of
That's
salt
what I
water.
said, yes.
It's kind of like when you go to the ocean. Oh, which brings up a good point. Is my pool going to
It's
taste
not
like
like
the
the
ocean? It's not like the ocean.
No,
What's
it's
it
not
like?
like you.
It's like the bay, the intercoastal.
Well,
No,
maybe.
it's
I've
not.
never tested the
It's
salt
not.
water in that. I haven't tested the salt level in the intercoastal, only the beach.
Next on location, testing the salt level in the intercoastal.
I've tested the phosphates in the intercoastal before and it was way high.
All right, so that was all really unnecessary. So so tell me chemistry wise, what am I dealing with different? It's not the same, is it?
I'm sorry that I love that little whine you just did. No, it's not the
Whine I
same.
just did? Did I whine?
Whine, you did a
Huh?
little bit.
Oh
It
my
was fun.
God.
Leave it in. So anyway, so you're gonna have a higher pH than you would if you with a regular chlorine pool, and especially if you are used to using tabs. The tabs have a low pH, so you usually tab pools will run on a lower pH, a low alkalinity. The salt pools are going to have a much higher pH just due to the whole process, the whole, salt mumbo jumbo that happens. So that causes you to have a high pH.
Because of the mumbo jumbo.
Yes, the salt mumbo jumbo.
Okay. So the mumbo jumbo goes on and it drives the pH.
Electrolysis.
So the pH goes up, right?
Yes.
And that happens all the time.
Constantly, yes.
Well, when you say goes up, you mean like 7.6, 7.7, or
No,
no?
they typically run higher than that, 8.0.
You're talking
7.8,
off the
8.0.
charts high, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Correct.
So how do you remedy that?
Well, you're going to have to add acid a lot more frequently than a normal chlorine pool. So you're going to want to test, be available to test for you. If you're home during the day, if you're a service professional, that might not work out for you to do it more often. But at that point, you're just going to want to make sure that you always are adding acid. But then you're always going to need to check your total alkalinity because you don't want that to drop.
So I'm adding acid on a regular basis. That is now part of my routine, and I'm adding it in fairly decent amounts. Now, part of the problem is the test kit that most folks have uses a chemical called phenol red to test pH. And phenol red can test the pH between 6.8 and 8.2. That's all it can do. Anything higher than 8.2 is going to look just like 8.2. So when I get a reading of 8.2, it could be 8.2. But it could be 9.2, 10.2. I don't know, right? It's just the maximum that the kit can read. So all I can safely say is that it's 8.2 or higher.
Higher.
And it tops out. So how do I know how much acid to add? Am I just winging it? Add a little bit, see what happens?
Well, if you're using the test kit that you just mentioned, there is a acid demand test that you run that will give you an exact dosage on what to add to bring the level down to where you want it to be.
Okay, and it includes one of those for the other direction as well. If the pH had turned yellow, 6.8, we know it's 6.8 or lower. There's also a base demand test in that kit, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so and that'll tell me exactly how much. Can't I use automation here also?
Yes, you can.
Wouldn't that make my life easier?
That would be ideal, yes. And then even if you
So
had
shouldn't people Like when they go to get these salt systems installed, shouldn't that builder, dealer, pool store, whoever it is, and maybe they do have it as an option, right? And it's just something that people cross off the list or not. But it is something that you could add
after the fact.
But we should, if we're going to switch to salt now, when you buy the salt cell, right, or when you talk to the pool professional who's installing it, you should demand, I think you should demand an acid feed system for your pool, because it's going to make your life so much easier.
Because you already have the chlorine essentially automated in the salt system. So why not go with automating the acid as well and make your life twice as easy? Chlorine is less effective. It becomes less effective the higher the pH gets.
And
Same thing with that.
We know that's only true if there's no cyanuric acid in the water, correct?
Yeah, you're going to have to explain some of that, though.
That's a different conversation, but chlorine, depending on what you're doing with your pool water, can be pH dependent. We got that. So it's important there. We want to have the chlorine work that's in the water. Otherwise, there's no point of having the system there at all anyway.
And then the last thing that I tell people about when they're asking me about salt systems is that you do still want to shock the pool. And by shock, I mean you're going to want to add another form of chlorine. And the reason for that is to remove any combined chlorine that has built up, because the salt system is not going to get that level high enough or fast enough to get rid of any of that. So if you actually taste salt in the pool, that could be a sign that you have a high combined chlorine reading level.
Isn't it true that when you taste salt in the pool, that's because a whole bunch of people peed in it?
Yes, probably worse.
True. Okay, we were talking about that before. We said it wasn't like the ocean. So 35,000 parts per million is, sometimes people are concerned that this stuff can irritate their eyes because there's salt in it. But eye wash solution, guess what? 9,000 parts per million. There's a lot of salt in that stuff. Not as much, in fact, there's not as much in your saltwater pool as there is in eye wash solution.
Isn't it called saline drops?
Well, there you go. They call it that for a reason, right? Because they make it with sodium chloride, gives you saline water. All right, so you got to shock it. You're saying you have to use something separate, even though my system says that it can superchlorinate or boost or whatever it says. You're telling me that might not be enough.
Yes, because you need a very high and a very rapid increase of the free chlorine level in order to oxidize any of the combined chlorine or the byproduct of the sanitation process.
And that's due from all the gack and schmutz that comes off of people that refuse to shower, right? That's just kind of from nasty people.
Well, from everybody.
Not just the nasty people. So you're saying we're all just a little bit nasty in our
I think so.
Okay. So, yes. All right. So we have to shock it on a regular basis because there's there is a lot of stuff that comes off of you, right?
Mm-hmm. You have sweat,
skin. Gross. Okay.
Yes.
Cosmetics, makeup, those types of things. Lotions, oils, poop.
There's that.
There is poop, right?
Yeah.
There's a scientist out in, I think he's at the University of Southern Arizona. He'd actually done a lot of research with this. His name is Charles Gerber. You're going to have to look it up. But I believe he was able to determine that the average person immediately following a shower with hot soapy water. So this is right after we get out of a shower and into the pool. And tell the truth, does anybody shower before they get in the pool?
I've never seen it.
No, so it doesn't happen. People don't shower. They shower when they get out. I don't care how much.
The pool is the shower for some people.
Well, because I don't care how much schmutz I add to the water. I just don't want your schmutz on me. So when I get out, I'm going to take a shower. But what this guy has found is that the average adult immediately following a shower with hot soapy water carries 0.14 grams. 1.4 would be a lot, but 0.14 grams of feces on their person.
That's yucky.
So every time you stick your ass in the water, you're adding poop to the pool.
And then someone's got their mouth in that water.
And that's also gross. And one of our rules, what's the big rule?
Don't drink the butt water.
Don't drink the butt water. Exactly. All right. So at this point in time, before we continue with this, I want to give something away. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a little bit of a contest, and what I'm going to give away is one of I have a couple of different books. I have a new one out on saltwater pools, so this is a good time for that. So this might appeal more to the saltwater pool owner than some of the other folks, but don't worry, we're going to make a thing out of this, right? So we're going to have a little bit of a giveaway. We're going to utilize it with Instagram. We talked about it. We have an Instagram account. We discussed it a little bit at the beginning. So here's what you have to do, and we're just going to take what is it? Come up with a number.
27.
The 27th person, right? So you're not going to know who's doing this. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find us on Instagram. And like we said, we're at Talking Pools, right? Talking Pools podcast, at Talking Pools. Find us, follow us, and then you need to post a picture to your story, tag us in it somehow, and the topic should be why you want to be a part of the Talking Pools Air Force. Right? So we're going to go with that. We're going to take the 27th person. The 27th person is going to win something. I know it's an ebook, and trust me, the more followers we get, the bigger the prizes will be. I promise you that.
Can you repeat the rules to me, because you were laggy a little bit? So they have to follow us, and then what?
They have to follow us. Yes, they have to find us, follow us, post a picture to their story that they tag us in, and the theme should be why I want to be a member of the Talking Pools Air Force, or why I should be a member of the why I am a member, right? Any of those things, as long as it's Talking Pools Air Force in it, and it doesn't say sucks, that's what we're going to roll with.
Okay, so they have to post to their story and tag us, and then we'll see that. Okay,
yes,
and then we pick
because they tagged us, and we'll get the 27th one that shows up. That person wins.
Perfect. I got it.
So does that mean that everybody's going to hold off at first? Probably, right? Just wait for a while. But you can't hold off for too long, because this is going to be as soon as this is released. Somebody's going to go first.
Yeah, well, I mean,
like,
if you're like me and you have 18 different accounts, then you can.
So here's the thing. Remember those radio contests? I mean, maybe they still do them right now, where they give away concert tickets, right?
The radio?
Yeah, it's the thing in your car when Sirius isn't on. So
I don't even.
All right. So radio contests back in the day, you get the phone, you start to dial, right?
Yes.
Right. So we dial on the phone. All right. Back in my day is a little further back than back in your day, maybe on a cell phone, whatever. So you start dialing through as soon as you hear the announcement, and you get that annoying, right? The busy thing.
Gotta hang up.
So you keep dialing, you keep dialing, you keep dialing. Finally, it's ringing. And you hear them talking to the person that won, and that's why it's ringing so long. But every now and then you might get through. Well, we're not going to do that to you. Yeah, we're not doing that to you. We're going to make it easy. Just post to your Instagram page after you followed ours, Talking Pools Air Force. All right, back to the saltwater pool. Tell me this. Some people say it's corrosive. Is it? In your experience, has it damaged the coping around the pool? Has it damaged the rock features around the pool?
Not in my experience at all. No, not So at one point, my route was, I can't remember exactly how many pools I had on the route, but it was a good 90% were salt pools.
90%.
Yes, almost all of them were. So I think I had like 5 that were not salt pools, and everything else was a salt pool. I went through a lot of acid. So I was just saying, why were we talking about that?
Because we were talking about corrosive water. And we want to know
corrosive water. Yes. So out of all those pools that I had that were salt pools, I never saw any kind of damage, corrosion. I never saw any metal fixtures rusting. I've had people with rock waterfalls, all kinds of different features. The only scaling and damage that I've seen on like rocks and stuff like that has come from efflorescence, which is water, seeping in from behind. And I've never experienced any other damage specifically from salt.
Well, the
water.
The truth is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way that salt at that level, 3,000 to 4,000 parts per million, could be corrosive on stonework is if the stonework wasn't sealed properly in the first place.
Right.
And in that case, you might see a problem, but the problem's not the salt. The problem's that stonework needed to be sealed. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So does that take up everything we just talked about? Is that pretty much all the different methods of adding chlorine that we can use to add chlorine without it being a chlorine tablet? Is there anything that we haven't talked about? There's dichlor. We don't like to talk about dichlor too much because it should be an every now and then thing, not an all the time thing, right? Because it adds a lot of
the cyanuric acid. It's pretty similar to the trichlor, except I don't think it has as low of a pH, I think is the main difference.
Okay, and lithium hypochlorite, right? That used to be the chlorine that they used at the White House pool, lithium hypochlorite. So just fun facts, throwing them out everywhere, right? So lithium hypochlorite, we don't talk about that a lot either. It's fantastic product, super, super quick dissolving, but really hard to find. And I don't
that's
know.
That's a gas, right? Is that a gas? What is that? Yeah.
Well, no, it's a granule like cal hypo, except it's super quick dissolving. You'll use twice as much of it. It's expensive and it's really, really hard to find. And you may never have used it, but vinyl pools, fiberglass pools, really, really popular because of how quickly it dissolves. All right. So is that every method of chlorine now? Is there anything we left out?
Well, there's still bromine, but that's not appropriate for
it's inappropriate.
That is inappropriate.
The bromine's the friend that you don't bring around bromine's the friend that you don't bring to parties because they'll embarrass you in front of your other friends. Is that what you're saying?
And
they are inappropriate. So, all right, that's not the case at all. Bromine it's a different product. You could switch over to bromine. That's true.
All right. So bromine, as I mentioned, not appropriate for outdoor pools because there's no stabilizer for bromine. And so the sun is just going to burn it off immediately, pretty much. I don't know the time frame for that, but yes, it's quick.
You could also get disinfection byproducts from the UV rays of the sun in a pool that uses bromine. The disinfection byproduct is called bromate, which is a carcinogen. So that's one of the other reasons why we shy away from bromine in outdoor bodies of water. And of course, the same thing you wouldn't want to.
That's what I call my son sometimes.
Bromine or carcinogen? Bromate. Oh.
What's up, bromate?
So there you go. Oh gosh, there's just not enough therapy in the world for you, is there? So let's say, all right, so let's look outside of that. There are different things we can use, though, that will enable us to use lower amounts of chlorine. And we started out the show today talking about one of them, right? We spoke about the Blu-ray XL. That and it doesn't have to be that specific brand, though they followed us on Instagram and the rest of you didn't. So we're going to talk, but there are different minerals in there that can enable you to use a much lower chlorine level successfully, and for the reasons we spoke about at the beginning. What are a couple of other things we can use that would also enable us to use much less chlorine?
Right. UV and ozone. Ozone, similar to a salt cell where it's injected into the water, so it would be automated.
It has to be part of the system. There's a machine. It has to either produce the UV or it has to produce the ozone. So I watched last night on TV. I was watching Justice League, right? And I saw the Justice League movie when it first came out. You know, Aquaman, Superman, Batman, The Flash, and Wonder Woman, right? And they're fighting against his name's Steppenwolf. I almost called him Zephyr Hills. So I'm sitting here. So they're fighting against Steppenwolf, right? So I watched last night the director's cut.
Okay.
The director's cut, 4 hours long. And I thought to myself at first, I almost didn't put it on because it said, oh, okay, here's the director's cut of the same movie. But I figured it was going to be a little extra footage here, a little extra footage there. It is a totally different story. There's
Really?
some scene. There are some scenes that were in the first one, but the whole thing is twisted and discombobulated, and some things that happen in the first one don't happen in the second one. Some things that happen in the second one don't happen in the first one. Like, for example, the Joker's in this one. Oh yes, it's true. The Joker.
Really?
Really, I would not lie to you. Not about superheroes, Andrea. I'll lie about a lot of things, but superheroes, no, I take that shit seriously. All right.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, I watched it last night. I stayed up a little later than I wanted. I did not expect it to be 4 hours long. It was a 4 hour long movie, but you know what? It didn't feel about like it. I mean, I knew I was getting tired, but it didn't feel like it. So it was kind of cool. So anyway, so I watched
Yeah.
that. And that's what was going on there. So let me ask you this: with all these different things that we talked about, there's additional expenses to some of them, and we spoke about some of those. But some things people might not be thinking about: test kits, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Tell me about that. I mean, realistically, we're talking about adding copper, we're talking about adding silver, we're talking about adding salt, all these different things. What am I doing?
Um, as far as testing the water goes, I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
different there's a lot of different kits that you can get, a lot of different ways to test. The main one that we use, the Taylor kit, everybody knows the blue box. You can't test for do they make metal? No, I don't think
Not in
so.
that box. They do, but
Not
not in that box. Well, here's the
yeah.
thing. Should I just bring it to the pool store? Is that frequently enough? Well, say I'm going to rely 100% on the pool store. How often do I need to bring water there?
A minimum of once a week, I would say. And then if you are having problems or you need more peace of mind, then take it every day if you need to. But keep in mind, that's their business model. They're gonna want to sell you chemicals if they test your water for free. So they're
What about at my home? Say I own a test kit. How often should I test the water?
same thing. Once a minimum of once a week. You definitely want some regular frequency. The more often the better, obviously. Then you can stay on top of potential issues.
Do I have to absolutely positively have to have a test that can test for salt?
If you have a salt pool, then yes, that would be a necessary thing. Not the systems can become not calibrated.
Not
There can be this
I like to say out of whack, but that's cool.
calibrated. There you go, out of whack.
Discombobulated.
The systems can freak out, and then they won't be
No, they're
accurate,
not.
and
No,
you'll have to calibrate.
Stop it. Stop it right. They're not freaking out. They're perfectly calm. They're just out of whack. But all right, take it up from there. So they can get out of whack. They need to be recalibrated. What about copper? I'm adding copper to the pool. Do I have to test that?
Copper, yes, you absolutely have to test because copper can actually be dangerous at super high levels. It's not good for
The
people.
EPA, right? They regulate copper in drinking water.
Yes.
The same rules we follow in pool water. Yeah, but the levels that we use in swimming pools, they're not harmful at all. You should own a test kit for anything that you put into the pool water that a test kit exists for. You're using it, a test kit exists for it, you should own it. Whether you're a pool service company, an aquatic center, or a residential home, don't throw all the weight on the pool store. They're not on site. They can't test at the accuracy and frequency you do. At a minimum, if you take it right now and head there right now, that'll probably be fairly accurate. But that's not what we do, right? We take the bottle, right? We throw it in the back seat of the car. It bounces around throughout the whole day. And then I bring it during lunch. Then I go there during lunch. Meanwhile, this thing is sat in my car for hours. Is that water reflective of what I have in my pool at this point in time?
No, not anymore.
Right? Okay, so we get rid of that. Right, so let me ask you this. We've talked about a lot of solutions in this episode about what we could do, what a homeowner could do, what a pool service could do, what a facility could do if they use tablets and all of a sudden we're out, right? Do we expect the well to run dry on those other things as well?
I mean, I would not be surprised if we started to see a shortage on those other things like liquid chlorine or salt, for example. I think we talked about last week, now there's a lot more now there's a lot higher demand for the salt systems. So I would expect to start seeing salt be less easy to get. Chlorine is already, I think I mentioned this last week too, where they're already going to be doing a price increase. I don't think they have yet, but there's signs up all over. And I've seen a couple posts on Facebook, on social media, where liquid chlorine is totally gone in some places.
So already gone, already sold out of stock. They can't find it.
Yeah, I was actually helping a woman on Facebook yesterday. I was helping her with her pool, and I told her to go and get liquid chlorine. She had a pretty green swamp after they opened up. And she went to the store and she had to buy bleach. She couldn't find regular chlorine.
A regular house.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So probably it depends. At least at a minimum, we foresee that there's going to be hiccups in getting this product to different locations because of the increased demand. And it's going to be a whole new learning curve. There's so many more people that are going to be looking for these alternatives. The manufacturers that do make these products are going to have to figure a way to keep up. Then we have to look at containers like you brought up last week. There's a resin shortage, so it's hard to find things to put some of this stuff in. And then there's also shipping problems. So all in all, it's going to be challenging. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to talk about, or at least just mention, and it probably deserves its own show, but it does tie into what we're talking about. When we discuss adding all of these different things, one of the things that comes up often is borates. And the way borates work, the main reason we use borates is a buffer against an increasing pH. So if there's things in the water that want to make the pH go up, the borates actually change it into something else. So that way it doesn't drive it upward as quickly. So that's a huge benefit with saltwater pools. We spoke about those and the never-ending increase in pH. So if you go with salt, you have to add pepper. Pepper is the borate, right? So we could go with a borate level there. And what we've normally established is 30 to 50 parts per million. We don't exceed 50 parts per million for the same reason with everything else has a maximum level, because it could be harmful. And we do buy a borate test kit. I don't care if it's strips, drops, whatever, buy a borate test kit, keep that level less than 50. That's one of those things where you will have to replace water if you add too much in order to lower it. But we don't want anybody to get sick. Now, the other benefit of having borates in water is borates also serve as an algistat. Algistat means that the product prevents algae. It won't kill algae. If it's already in the pool and you add it, it's still going to be there and it's probably going to continue to grow. But if your pool is algae-free and you add this, it will enable you to use a lesser amount of chlorine and keep your pool algae-free, because it will help the chlorine to prevent algae from becoming established. So I think that's an important thing to throw in as well. And we can talk more and more and more about it. But for right now, I think that ties in enough. So that's what we got going on. As far as people go, I've had a couple of people ask me when our shows are. Our shows are going to be released every Friday. I'm thinking 4 o'clock is what I'm going to shoot for, 4 p.m. every Friday, right? That's what we're going to shoot for as far as releasing these. Is this a show just for pool professionals? I don't think so. I think this is a show for people who take care of pool water, whether it's the water in your backyard or 200 backyards on your route or an aquatic center, a water park, what have you.
HOA,
a
condo,
even
hotels,
even a float tank center.
Yeah.
I think this is a show for everybody that takes care of water that people get into that's not, a natural body of water. So unnatural bodies of water. So anyway, is that correct? No.
I'd go with that.
This is correct. You're Andrea Nanini. I'm Rudy Stankwitz.
You're Rudy Stankwitz.
I am Rudy Stankwitz. And that's our show for this week.
The Talking Pools podcast is brought to you by the people who created the Algae Prevention and Eradication Specialist Certification course. If you are interested in taking your pool care skills to the next level, attend the industry's only focused algae training session today. Remember, a green swimming pool is never in style. The How to Get Rid of Swimming Pool Algae Handbook. And the Virtual Pool Museum. If it's old, it's gold. Visit us today.